and understanding your increment of overlap. And what I tell painters is this: to this day, I'm 45 years I've been painting. I go in the booth when I put my suit on, I tell myself, I am a robot. I am a robot. I know my pattern size, I know my gun distance approximately, and I know what my increment of overlap is going to be, and at the end of each pass, click down, click down, click down. And it's as accurate as I humanly can be. I'm not talking about rocket science. I'm only saying if you are engineered and you do the increments of overlap correctly based on how the gun is set up. And many painters that attempt this go in there with a full trigger pull. And I had a young painter from Stockton, California come up to me at a seminar that night and said, I'm trying to paint motorcycles, but I'm really having trouble. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, they either run or they get muddy or I lose the base coat because there's so much paint on there. They get rippled, they get heavy looking. I can't make it work. And I said, what kind of a paint gun do you have? He said, I've got a Sharp 775. I said, whoa, that's an old paint gun. I said, in our shop, we call that the hoser. We use that gun for primer a lot of the time. And he said, well, that's what I'm using. I said, well, what kind of gun adjustments are you doing? He looked at me and he said, gun adjustments? I said, you mean you're trying to paint motorcycles with a 14-inch pattern? I want to know how you get the 1 tank and 6 to turn out, because I don't know how you could get anything to turn out with a 14-inch pattern. I work with a 4-inch pattern on motorcycles when I'm candy painting the first 3 coats. And I use a 1-inch increment throughout the part, so I'm in perfect control from the beginning to the end. I work at a very close distance, as you'll see today when we candy paint some parts. I don't get a great distance away because I'm out of the control of the air horn. It lets the paint flop on the job. You don't want that. A custom painter is a violinist. He's a controlled painter. He knows his moves. He's engineered his object. And when do we begin to learn how we're going to paint the given object? When we apply the primer is when you want to start figuring how you're going to paint this car. And when you're applying the sealer, you can figure out how you're going to engineer this car. And of course, the moment of truth is when you load the candy into the gun and everything else is done to perfection. Now it's up to you to put that coat on as evenly as you know how. And that requires, believe me, some expertise. And you guys, with what we're sharing with you today, you can certainly do it. You're probably already doing it, some of you here, so a lot of this is redundant. Let's load a paint gun and put